every YouTube tutorial, every method book you have probably ever opened, it says it tried to teach you the chord-scale theory. And one of the most respected jazz educator of the last 50 years, Hal Galper, who we lost last July, called it on camera in his own words. I consider chord-scale relationships a totally bogus way of teaching improvisation. That is not me, that is him from inside the system. By the end of this video, you will hear 4 more sentences from Hal Galper that explain exactly why. I am Junwon Choi. I went to Berklee College of Music. I love that institution and I am grateful for what I got there. But I got lucky. My first semester, I found Richie Hart, and Richie Hart did not teach me chord-scale. He taught me what jazz actually was: songs, melody, conversation. The thing that lives inside the music, not the system that gets stamped on top of it. Today's whole channel, the functional diagonal approach, is what I built after Richie Hart's path. And this channel is explicitly the opposite of the system that produced that jam. Today's episode is about exactly what that system is, why it does not work, and what one of the most honest voices in jazz education was saying about it for decades until last July. You have been swimming in chord-scale theory your whole jazz life. Every play this scale of that chord's lessons, every modal chart, every Dorian over D minor 7 rules, and it is not just not enough. It is the wrong frame entirely. None of the masters taught this way, not West, not Bernstein, not Tatum, not Coltrane. They were doing something completely different, and one of the people who taught at the highest level of jazz education was already saying so decades ago. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what he said, 5 sentences in his own words. Once you see the difference between playing scales of changes and playing music, you cannot unsee it. Every lesson, every method, every YouTube tutorials gets reorganized in your head. Some of them survive, most don't. And tonight, pick one standard, just one. Do not open a chord chart. Do not pull up a scale reference. Just sing the melody. All the way through, memory only. If you cannot, that is where the system left you. That is where today starts. What chord-scale and theory actually is. It says this: every chord has a scale that fits it. D minor 7, D Dorian, G7, G Mixolydian, C major 7, C Ionian. Sometimes it doesn't have only one choice, there are multiple choices, right? Memorize the scales. The scales we are just talking about in every instrument, but doing that on the guitar is multiplies like how many? Like 20, 30, 50? So memorize those scale boxes, scales. Play them when the chord goes by. Your notes will be correct. It is elegant. It is teachable. It scales beautifully to 1,000 student music school. It also the wrong question. Notice what chord-scale theory does to your thinking. The chords goes by. Your job is to play notes that fit. You are not connected to the harmony. You are sitting on top of it. The notes are correct, but they are not responding to anything specific in this tune, in this moment with these other players. And also, you are playing them when the chord is changing, which means you are not making your lines towards where it's going. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Hal Galper passed away last July 2025. He was 87. He'd played with Cannonball Adderley in the early 70s and 10 years in Phil Woods Quartet through the 80s. He was a charter faculty member at the New School for Jazz when it opened in 1986, taught for decades at SUNY-Purchase until he retired in 2014, recorded over 100 albums. And for the last 20 years of his life, he was saying out loud on camera in interview after interview what almost nobody inside the system would say. I am going to give you 4 more sentences from him in his own words because they say it better than I can. He said, "It is something academics created. It is a shortcut. They have created a lot of damn shortcuts because they can sell it to you, the business. That's it. That is the origin. Not this is how jazz works. This is how we sell jazz to thousands of students at once. Information you can package, test, certify. Music does not fit through that door. A product that looks like a music does." 2. Chord-scale relationship is cookie cutter teaching. Cookie cutter. Same shape stamped over and over. Same scale stamped over every chord of the quality. Does not matter what tune, does not matter what story, does not matter what the melody was already telling you, the cookie cutter. My big beef about chord-scale relationship is it is a closed-in system. No concept is good if it is closed in. It has to have infinite possibilities. This is the deepest one. Music is infinite. The system has to be infinite. Chord-scale theory has a fixed answer for every chord. Dorian on D minor 7, Mixolydian on G7, closed loop. Finished. Nothing to the song to add. Nothing for the moment to add. Nothing for you to add. A closed system cannot produce living music. It can only produce correct notes. If you want to see the infinite solo idea from shell voicing, click the card right now on the right corner. I laid it out cleanly. And number 4, it is not information, it is internalization. You can give a student all the information in the world, every scale, every chord, every position. I mean, it is not your job to give them. It is already out there. They will still not be able to play music, yes, because what produces music is not the data. It is the deep absorption of songs. The tune lives in your body, in your ear. The melody is automatic. The harmony is felt, not calculated. Information is what schools sell. Internalization is what music actually is. And those are not the same thing. He is gone now. The voices saying this from inside the system are getting fewer. That is why I am saying it today. So, if Chord-Scale is a bogus, what is the alternative? Galper told us that too, and he traced it all the way back. Galper used to tell this story. He read it in a Louis Armstrong biography and said it changed how he thought about teaching. A young Louis Armstrong is in King Oliver's band. Playing second trumpet, he's playing fast, ornate, showing off. The way every young player does, right? The King Oliver pulls him aside and says, "Why don't you learn how to play a melody before you play all them fancy embellishment?" Galper unpacked that one sentence for the rest of his life. King Oliver was distinguishing two kinds of improvising: embellishment and the melody. And he was saying melody first, always, then everything else. The Galper put the science of it like this: things work not from complex to simple, but from simple to complex. The ear loves logic. It rejects chaos. If you have been established a simple foundation in your ears, chord melodies, slow in time, you cannot hear faster lines. You can play them mechanically. You cannot hear them. And music you cannot hear is music the audience cannot hear either. Solo is not a melody plus new notes. Solo is melody plus embellishment. The melody is always still there, under the line, inside the line, generating the line. That is the hierarchy. Melody first, always. Here is the part Galper made me notice. When you look at the melodies of the great American standards, All the Things You Are, Body and Soul, Stella by Starlight, you find something stunning. Almost every melody note sit on the third on the chord underneath it. Not the root, not the fifth, but the third. I just played the All the Things You Are melody, right? With some embellishment. But look closely. The melody is the third. So F minor 7, the third, the B flat minor, the third, the D flat, and then third, E flat 7, the G is the third, A flat, the C is the third, and the D flat, major, and D minor, it stays there. And when it goes to the B natural, it is G7, which is the third again. The third of the C major 7. So the melody is tracing the harmony. The composer already wrote the most important notes for you. Jerome Kern George Gershwin, Cole Porter. They all knew this. They built it into the melodies. If you do not see the third, if you are just thinking A flat Dorian over F minor 7, you are missing the entire architecture of the song. The melody is not decoration on top of the chords. It is the chord identity, expressed as a single note played in time. That is what chord-scale theory hides from you. One note, major or minor, that identity. Now, here is the part that knocked me out. In one of Galper's last public lectures, he sat down at the piano and showed people what he did instead of chord-scale theory. He played what looked like a steady stream of eighth notes through eiger rhythm changes. Then he stopped and he said, "That sounds like a long line," but he said it is illusion. The ear cannot hold a long line. The ear hears in groups of 4. Then he played the same line but separated 4 notes group, 4 notes, and another 4 notes. And the last notes of every group landed on a chord tone, he said. 1, 3, 5, or the seventh of the chord underneath it. And he said, those last notes are the melody. That is my guide, he said it. My guide. Stop and sit with that. So 4 notes group, the last notes on a chord tone. The chord tones are the melody. That is what Galper was doing his whole career. That is exactly what this channel calls voice leading. What I call the West line, what I call the Django line. Same architects, different vocabulary. Galper said it in words. The masters did it on the bandstand for 100 years. We just gave it a name and a method. That is the entire premise of FDA, the functional diagonal approach. The chord tones, working 4 notes at a time, telling the story. Galper described the engine we built, you, the practice room. So, those targeting 1, 3, 5, 7 is a bit of an advanced thing. So I just choose one target, and that one target spread out to the whole fretboard. That is my curriculum on the guitar. And here is the line I want you to hear. Galper said all this on piano. A Cannonball, Pianist, the New School, SUNY. His whole career was piano voice. Sat at the keyboard, played four notes group said those last notes are the melody. Spent 40 years teaching it. Richie Hart taught me the same thing on the guitar. Different instrument, same architecture. Song first, a melody, a chord tone, voice leading, the line that works. Now, both of them are out of the room. A Galper passed last July, which is not on YouTube. That generation did not have to be. They taught the way you teach when the apprenticeship still works. One student, one bandstand, one room. That is gone. That room is closed. So somebody has to carry this forward when the next generation actually learns on the internet, on guitar. That is why this channel exists. That is what voiceleadjazzguitar.com is. The line continues here. Few days later, I will put the second video of this series. Applies this exact principle to one specific tune. The tune Berklee actually got right. Keep in tune. This was the first of the 3 videos. Why we got lost. There was this video, the chord-scale theory plus the system, and 5 sentences from Hal Galper that name it for what it is. And a couple days later, the one tune Berklee got right. Every melody notes on the third. They call it the anthem. All the things you are. You will hear what Galper was pointing at. And the series number 3, how that one principle, every melody notes on the third becomes a whole line. Voice leading, Western line, Django line. The 4 notes chord tone groups, Galper showed it in his last lecture, turned into a daily practice. And June's songbook drops. The 3 jazz standards, every voicing, every line, every reason behind every choice. The curated solos with the architecture made visible. It is the internalization Galper was talking about, not information. Songs in your ear. The June's songbook page is live now. Link in the description. And if you did not watch the previous video yet, that is the structural foundation underneath all of this. Watch it before the next episode. The cards are right there. What you saw in that meme, the Berklee Professor Jam meme, was not bad luck. It was chord-scale theory playing out, decades on in real time. Hal Galper called it a bogus, a cookie cutter, a closed system, a business. Yeah, the business part. Barry Harris said it too. He said, it's a business. He said it for 40 years from inside. Hal Galper is gone now. The least we can do is hear him and keep the line going. You do not have to be in this system. Comment below what is the first thing a jazz teacher ever told you to do, and looking back now, was it teaching you a melody or scales? I read every comment, so please put the comment below, and until next time, keep swinging.